Whose story of abstinence do you believe more? Is it AC Green in the NBA, not college, AC Green in the NBA, or Tim Tebow in the SEC? We bring in John Clark, of course, on the Lighthouse Guest Insurance.
Well, you're opening up the guest line and John Clark's conversation with that. I thought we'd hit that with him at the end.
No, I was going to set that up so people can interact on the text board and transition. I would never insult John by leading with that.
Good.
I'd probably slide it in like the third or fourth question.
Right.
I assume we have to talk bamboo.
We're talking bamboo.
And Phillies first, John.
How you doing, fellas?
We're doing great, man.
How you doing, man?
Doing good. Good week here in Philly.
Yeah, it really has been.
Better
What
than
a
last week.
turnaround. I can't believe it. And I know you've been documenting this thing so well on your social media platforms, on Twitter and on Instagram. Are you a believer, personally, in this bamboo effect?
You know, I'm a believer in anything that kind of gets a team to come together a little bit more and be a little looser. And that's exactly what they were. When we walked in the locker room on Monday, Gabe Kapler kind of mentioned, like, you know what? We've got a renewed confidence today. I told these guys all to be loose and smile more, get back to smiling more. You can laugh at that, but, you know, when these guys are playing 162 games, you can get caught up in a little bit of monotony, and especially when you're losing. So, and then we went into the locker room, and I was talking to Brad Miller, and, he was not only open to talking about bringing the bamboo plant in, but he was so confident. I said, is everybody going to get a bamboo plant if you win tonight? And he said, when we win tonight. And, it was just a lot of confidence. And he said, I wanted to bring a little bit more of a loose atmosphere and a loose energy, a fun energy. And Jay Bruce, who's been around the game for a while, I think that some of the veterans were able to kind of let these guys know, like, hey, you're all trying too hard. Just do what you're supposed to do. And he actually told me, he said, I'm telling these guys, do less. And Dave Kapler had a good quote that he said a mental skills coach told him before, and he said, try easier. Don't try harder, try easier. So I think they all relaxed, and they loosened up a little bit, and they tried to just do their job, not try to hit a home run. And Gabe has preached to them the, like the station to station or the pass the baton approach, where we've got 8 or 9 guys, let's say 8 guys in the lineup that can help out and do their thing. So you don't individually need to hit the big home run. So I think they all did that, and they stayed within themselves, and I think they found themselves again going on this 10-game road trip.
John, how much of what you speak about, just the relaxed atmosphere and the different approach, has been manifested in Bryce Harper over the last 4 or 5 games?
Yeah, listen, when your best players are hitting the ball well, and Bryce, for the most part, has for the last, week and a half, that's huge. Reese Hoskins has really been one of the few guys who has stayed consistent. You can throw Scott Kingery in there. Sure. Reese Hoskins has been one of the few guys that has stayed consistent. And I think that helps, especially when they're facing deficits. I mean, this 4-game sweep was really special. I mean, number one, in baseball these days, it's really hard to sweep 4 games anymore. And they trailed in every game by a couple runs. I mean, first game they get down 2-0 in the first inning, and they come back with a 3 spot. And look, I know we get kind of teased by this guy as well, but Maikel Franco, to have 3 different 2-run homers in this series, each of them either giving a lead or tying up the game. I know he's maddening with the inconsistency, and he knows it. We talked to him after the game, and he goes, I know I need to be more consistent. But when you have him in the lineup, he adds that extra dimension that most, 6, 7, 8 hitters don't, where you can hit the ball out of the ballpark at any time. So I think you're right. I think Bryce started to hit the ball well. You saw in this series, he hit a bunch of stingers to left center, and I think that's when you know Bryce is going good, when he's hitting balls to left center. And I think that gives confidence to the rest of the lineup. And I also don't think this needs to be overlooked, because they were searching for a leadoff guy for a while. Andrew McCutchen, when he left
Big loss.
Yeah.
He was leading baseball in walks and runs. And the main job of the leadoff guy is to get on and score runs. And so I think they were searching around, and I think Scott Kingery being in that leadoff spot on Monday, I think once you get a hit there, okay, James Rivera gets a hit, then it gets rolling again. And I think they set the table well, and I think you're right. Bryce Harper and all the guys, they're all starting to hit together. That's the thing. They most of them were not hitting during the losing streak and the down stretch, but now they're all starting to hit together, and I think that's real important.
John Clark, NBC Sports Philly, joining us on the Lighthouse Insurance guest line. You got to follow John on social media, man. He's unbelievable on Instagram at John Clark NBC, and then on Twitter at J Clark NBCS. All right, John, let's shift it to basketball. It's going to be a big weekend for the Sixers and really the majority of teams in the NBA. The serious landscape change will occur by the time Monday rolls around, most likely. What do you think happens here first with the Sixers and their free agents? So what's your take on Sunday at 6 p.m.?
Well, by the way, thank you very much for the plug. It means a lot to me. I tell you, guys, I mean, I wish I could go down to whatever casino in Atlantic City and bet on all these free agents and where they're going to line up, because this is pretty wild.
You can come to Parks in Ben Salem. It's quicker.
I'm there. I'll do it because this is fun. I mean, I think this is – you can bet on this. It's even more fun than sometimes betting on games because,
I know.
You know, like honestly, I don't know. There's so many different variables about what could happen, and it's going to be interesting to see the first domino that falls. Like, okay, I know you're talking about the Sixers, but let's say Kawhi Leonard. Let's say the first domino falls that he stays in Toronto on a one-and-one deal where he can kind of come back and get a lot more money 2 years later. Okay, then who goes to the Lakers? Because now they have that max deal availability, right?
Right.
Okay, so then, okay, what happens to the Clippers if they lose out on Kawhi? Do they go back and really say, we want to get Tobias Harris back? You know, there's so many variables, but I think with the Sixers, I always try to think of the reason why stories are getting out. And it's really interesting to me that these Rocket stories, obviously Woj gets stuff from either teams or agents. And it's interesting to me that it's all out there about this, that the Rockets are all in on Jimmy Butler and that they are creating, they've got deals in place or will have deals in place to trade away a couple of their guys to have the room, yada, yada, yada. So I'm trying to think of why this is out there. My opinion about this, and this is just my opinion, I think that this is partly put out there by the agent to try to pressure the Sixers into, from the get-go at 6 o'clock on Sunday, give Jimmy a max deal.
The fifth year.
Don't mess around with the 4 years. Don't mess around with all this. Go with the max deal. I think he's trying to put fear out there for the Sixers because that's the only team that can give them this amount of money. So I think if the Sixers give him the max deal, I think he stays. Now, the only thing in the back of my mind that's kind of interesting is, like, we don't know if Jimmy has always wanted to go home and play in Houston. We don't know that. I mean, I know that he likes James Harden. He's talked glowingly about him. I know that they're friendly. I know that they've talked. Jimmy was just back visiting home in Houston a couple weeks ago. So that's the one element we don't know if Jimmy wants to go back to Houston. But I think overall, Jimmy is looking for, at his age, and he's had, a little bit, he's had injuries here and there. I think he's looking for the most money, most years, and the only team that can do that is the Sixers. So I think whoever's putting this out there is trying to pressure the Sixers into doing that from the get-go. So in my opinion, I think Jimmy stays on a max deal. I guess they're going to try to bring Tobias Harris back as well on a max deal. And if they do that, I mean, that doesn't leave them much flexibility, but I think they're both back. But I think maybe if they get the first one on a max deal, they might say, okay, let's see how this free agency plays out so we can add some other pieces and not go all in with Tobias. Now, if Jimmy Butler goes back to Houston, then maybe they're all in with Tobias and then have a little bit of flexibility. But my opinion is I think one or two of them stay because money talks in the end.
Yeah, two things on that. First, I don't remember, nor do I recall, seeing anything back when Jimmy Butler was in Minnesota and pushing to be traded their talk about once the contract's up or even trying to angle a deal. And I know Houston was looking at him and throwing the first-round picks, the 4 first-round picks. But there wasn't anything specific as far as Butler wanting to go home, like Butler forcing the Wolves to do that or even talk about that on top of it. And the other thing, to your point about where this thing originated from, it seems odd and somewhat funny to me that the whole report about Chris Paul and James Harden unable to play together has evaporated with the ability now, or at least their ability, they think, to trade for Jimmy Butler. Like, those two guys went from, I can't stand the sight of each other, to, there's no problem. We're just looking to add Jimmy Butler.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you're right. You make a good point, because when we heard about the Kawhi trade and we heard about Paul George trade to Oklahoma City, we heard those rumblings that, oh, look, he's definitely going to go to L.A. He wants to go home. So what did Paul George wind up doing? Shockingly, I mean, I was shocked.
Me too.
He stayed in Oklahoma City. Kawhi Leonard, we heard those rumblings as well. And you're right, we have never heard rumblings from Jimmy Butler's camp or whatever about him always wanting to go back to Houston, or he's definitely going back. So that's why I think they're putting the pressure on the Sixers to go max deal and get this done.
Yeah, I think you're on to something, John. I really do.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a great weekend, man. Great stuff again today, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Hey, you got it. Always fun being on with you guys. Take care, man.
All right,
Thanks,
there
John.
he is, John Clark from NBC Sports Philly on the Lighthouse Insurance guest line.